Marshall Hales here from Finland. It's Rauta and I am Jerry, and this time we take you to the world of non-metallic music. Obviously, Rauta is always known about metal, especially extreme metal, but sometimes we go beyond the boundaries, and that is one of those times. So here we have this interesting, quite beautiful painting by Blind Rule Cursed Land. Obviously, we're gonna unsleeve it, because unboxing doesn't really make sense when we're talking about a release without a box. But sleeve we have, and as you can see, this is what I would say painted exactly by brushes and all. And on the other side we have a masked character, not exactly a supervillain, but probably not a hero either. Here it is, a track list, and this one is from Prague, Czechia. Here it is, music for Firewalkers. Inside we will obviously find music and a couple of pieces of paper. Let's make sure there is nothing hidden inside, as you might guess sometimes there are. There is some kind of stuff. This seems to come with a sticker, something that I didn't notice when I was spinning this on my turntable. I mean, when I do review vinyl releases, I tend to do them with, with the physical copy. Gives you the real experience and atmosphere and all. And then there's this inlay where you have all the necessary information, like all music and lyrics by Wilhelm Graslich. And then there are these notes about some lyrics made in the past, and now you might already guess some of the stuff. Yes, this does have something common with ancient Rome and all. And this is how the beautiful vinyl looks like. Doesn't really, I guess, go with the splatter design. I guess this is more like a swirl. So thick. Sun yellow vinyl 12-inch copy. Now I've done the unsleeving part. Let's tune in for a little bit of background here and explain what is going on here. This is the Blind Ruler Cursed Land Bandcamp site, which you already figured out, and as you can see, here's the basic information coming from Czechia and a solo project, as it says here. This is just the list of the releases thus far on Bandcamp, and here is the description, which I can totally agree. Basically summarizing it as world music having a baby with Marshall Industrial. And there is this list of releases. But we go for this one, which is of course the album in question. You can get it here in physical copy, some merchandise and all that stuff, and of course you can start listening to music here and all that stuff. And here are some more information. This was released already in November 2024, but vinyl, as always, get the priority in reviews even if they come late to the party. But you have also some tags, which are something that people probably look for when checking out music on Bandcamp. And you can see there's like cinematic, there's dark ambient, dramatic music, and all that stuff. Sometimes these are big time misleading, but I would say some of them are really true. Now, first of all, people who are familiar with Marshall Industrial might know some of the names through Cold Meat Industry and the like. The classic CMI featured artists like Puissance and stuff like that, where you really had these Marshall kind of industrial beatings, but they tended to be quite of the darker quite. I mean, more modern and giving you a little bit of feeling like, okay, this is cutting into some nuclear war or whatever. This is almost like similar in that fashion as whereas these modern Marshall industrial things are like of today, like black metal and stuff, more like modernized. And then you have these folkier acts, which are more history and nature and all that stuff. This is pretty much equivalent in Marshall Industrial about that, because this kind of takes you back, and that's where the word cinematic comes into play. So it's almost like you pick up certain Marshall Industrial parts where you get this kind of a army marching out of Rome, probably with the Julius Caesar kind of a thing, emperor. There's like part of the, spoken part are like, Hail Caesar, those who are about to die salute you, which is one of my favorite sayings of all times. I mean, I have been using the greeting Ave since late 90s when I started using internet. That was like my going to like Moriturite salutant, which is exactly the same but in Latin instead of those. So it was all about like, hey, we're ready to die for you and the Republic and so forth, in case you didn't know. Now, this takes me back to that kind of stuff. I mean, we're talking about old movies, historical movies and writings and all that stuff. And if you've ever been to Rome, Colosseum is a fantastic place. You can already kind of get to the feeling. But we're not here to talk about movies. That's the point why this word cinematic actually makes sense. Now, musically, this is definitely in the martial industry coming into that play, and those vivid images about centuries past and all that stuff, or more like millenniums past at this moment. But then there's also this world music thing, and you might be now wondering, okay, is this some kind of a Roman thing, and why it's like a guy from Prague doing that, all that stuff? No, there's a lot of instrumental ideas coming from more like Middle East and Far East. There are parts where it's like getting into some kind of a Silk Road thing. You're probably getting hints of India or something like that with certain instruments, and you're like, wow, okay, this is changing. So sometimes you're in Rome, mentally speaking, and sometimes you are, places like India or beyond. And that makes this album wonderful, or at least very, very interesting, because it's not just, one thing, one theme that is gotten true and all that stuff, but, like traveling. So now you could really be thinking, so what if this was like a Marco Polo thing after the Republic? I mean, fast forward a few centuries, or a few and more, and then you are suddenly traveling like Marco Polo to the China. And through the Silk Road thing, you a little bit like trade here and there, and you make business, and suddenly the Silk Road comes to being. It's a cinematic musical track. So yes, you have these world music parts, but in this case, it makes point to mention that this is more like Far Eastern thing rather than anything else. I feel Oriental would be the right way to describe it, but then sometimes people are like, oh, it's not really good way to put it on the map and all that stuff. Maybe I'm old school and all that, but I feel it kind of gives this one a better description than just calling it Asian, because it can really feel totally different. I mean, when we're talking about, like, say, old martial arts movies, we're thinking about Oriental martial arts. And, it's a mindset more than anything else. But who I can recommend this to? Well, those who are already in good terms with martial industrial. And there are plenty of these marginal acts which are not for, big audience and all that stuff. And those who are also into world music. And you have to be prepared for the cinematic spoken words part. But then again, that is part of martial industrial. So I'm not saying this is for everybody, obviously. This is kind of too marginal for that. And even a lot of black metal heads who are into that kind of stuff might feel a little bit, okay, it's not my cup of tea, but I find it fascinating. But I do like that in my books, this sounds rather original. It doesn't remind me of too many of that. Then again, I don't claim to be that experienced with, martial industrial as a big genre. I've been listening over the decades, few artists here and there, so I got my experience in that, but I'm not like an expert or anything, which you probably figured out. But those who are interested in martial industrial and world music and a little bit of cinematic experience in that sense might really find this fascinating. So obviously, if you do, this Bandcamp for this particular album especially, it's your way to go and give it a chance. Now, as I always tend to say, if you like it, go buy it, because why the hell not? Comes with a nice looking vinyl and all, so there is that. But those who are looking just metal and nothing else, don't go for it. It's not your cup of tea. This is Rauta, and now you know what to do. Click those links if I got you interested. If not, move on. More reviews coming your way. Bye bye. Cheers.